Check, am I audible? Am I audible? Okay, awesome. Do we have both team government and team opposition here? Team gov, yeah, team. Okay, we have it. Okay. Yeah, okay. Could both teams please send via chat their speaker order so we can take note of it? Hold on. Yep, the speaker order. Nur Zahrani. Okay. Shannon. Okay, Caroline. Why? Hafid, Jennifer, Serafin, Jennifer. Awesome. Okay. So as a reminder, the default for POI is via chat unless stated otherwise. Okay. So welcome to the quarterfinal round of NSDC 2020. My name is Afik Rifin Marvel. I'll be your chair today. Judging with me would be Axel Tarino, Eugenia Leoneta, Magdalene Claudia, and Stephanie Perwanto. The motion before the House reads, this House believes that feminist movement should support the social narrative that women leaders are better in managing the COVID-19 outbreak. Without further ado, I call upon the Prime Minister to deliver their speech. Here.
Give me time to arrange my paper first. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The case of COVID-19 is really big worldwide, infected around the world. Like 1 million people die and infected a lot of people. A lot of countries are impacted to this pandemic. It is not only impacted for the one who already died, but also impacted towards the economy of the country in itself, right? There are a lot of countries that led by men that proven fail in this kind of status quo in facing the pandemic. For example, the Donald Trump that even do irrational decision that say that COVID is just a hoax and you doesn't have to wear mask in situation. Meanwhile, at the end of the day, she is infected by COVID. Right? We see that it is so irrational decision that did by Donald Trump. Now, there's a rising proof that woman leader is actually did better in solvency in terms of economy, law, and the prioritization in terms of policy. Right? For example, the Angela Merkel succeeding the vaccine of COVID inside of the Germany because she's the one who actually do the prioritizing better inside of the Germany, right? And it will be distributed before 2021. Another example in Taiwan, Tsai-Ing did super strict supervision towards the citizen. She doesn't even do lockdown and etc. and doesn't give any economic damage in Taiwan, right? Because of that regulation that did by Tsai-Ing. Now our stance today is positive side of the house is that we will highly glorify woman leader is highly successful and really good in this current status quo. And we believe that social narrative of women could change under our side of the house and they could do our side of the house. The goal that we want to propose is that to highlight that woman is actually capable, and this is the golden momentum to do that, right? We want to counter the portrayal that for far too long we are weak, we are incapable, and we doesn't deserve anything as a woman. Therefore, it is our time to stand up as feminist movement to actually embolden that we are capable as women. Through our mechanism, first of all, as feminist movement, we will portray in public campaign and do publication in social media and other media that we did better as a woman leader. Second of all, we will highlight men leaders not capable because of the arrogancy and the incapability to to solve the case of COVID-19. That's clear my setup. Moving on to my first argument, why feminists should support the social narrative that woman leader is better. Let's do the characterization of woman leader in this current status quo. For far too long, this woman leader is always undermined by society, right? Women never being appreciated and credited for something that they did, even if it is really big, right? For example, woman is not for example, there's the stigma that woman is not objective, woman is not deserved to being a leader, and etc. because their emotional is not stable, and etc. We say this kind of situation is really degrading women that we want to change as feminist movement, right? Even if there's something big as being president under the Sarda house, like Carrie Lard in Hong Kong, we say the one who always being pinpointed by the society is actually the mistake, right? They always critique this kind of woman that we as women is not objective, only emotional, and etc. Therefore, this characterization is matter. Moreover, even if that we able to succeed as women, what we did is always dismissed by the society, even the man in itself, right? Because under the side of the house, there's a counter mechanism from the society to portray as if man is actually able to do that also. So therefore, what you did as woman is actually something that not special, right? That is why it is so mean towards the woman in this kind of status quo. So therefore, we want to change that as the feminist movement. We say no, the context of condition is something that already different, right? Since a lot of men leader is failed to solve those kind of COVID pandemic. For example, Donald Trump, that's so irrational. Donald Trump is so irrational, is so like say that COVID is only hoax. Putin that failed to provide PPE and being the highest country that the medical workers is already dying, and Jokowi failed to actually protect the society because he late respond towards the issue of COVID. We say this is something that we need to blow up because it will effective that woman is that no thank you that woman is capable, right? Because in this kind of status quo they're facing the same exam, that they never faced before in this current status quo. This is legit proof, ladies and gentlemen, that both woman and woman doesn't know doesn't know anything about what they face, but here woman can prove that she able to did better and could debunk the what men did in this current status quo. The success of men in this current status quo, we say that it is just because currently they have a bigger experience in what they did, right? Because for far too long they have a lot of access, not like women in this current status quo. So therefore, compared with the issue of COVID that new, the need the accuracy and the competence in prioritizing, we already proved that woman is actually upper hand on this situation. For example, what they did by Meghan Merkel, let's portray what she done in this current status quo, right? This kind of Meghan Merkel is already have a soft skill in terms of PSDM. It means that problem solving, decision making. She solved it better in giving better priority towards their society. For example, she she give a budget allocation towards the vaccine, and she being the first country that able to create vaccine that's suitable for their society and going to be distributed before 2021. This is actually the hard work that we should highly appreciate as a feminist movement, right? That the benefit is not only for women, but also a layer of society, including men under the side of the house. It means their hard work, like study, facing double standard job and housework, we should appreciate it as a feminist movement, and we should glorify that it is something that really great that did by this kind of leader, right? Second layer, talking about why this is the interest of feminist movement. We say exactly we're in line with the feminist movement interest when we're upholding women and appreciative towards what they did as a woman leader, right? For example, the moment we know they achieve the goal, we should appreciate them. Therefore, the moment we celebrate it, we're actually the one who actually in line with the characterization of feminist movement, and we in line with the interest of feminist movement. Compare under their side of the house, exactly under their side of the house they're not in line and exactly harmful, because at the end of the day, those kind of women will feel unappreciated. You will seen as ignorant stakeholder, meanwhile you're the one who actually should embrace the existence of women that able to achieve something, right? Exactly, this is important because the moment feminists that should embrace women being ignorant, women will less likely to actually sacrifice anything to represent their community in the future, right? Exactly under the under the side of the house, it is something that bad because it is not in line with the goal of feminist movement and the interest of feminist movement. Second argument, the benefit that exists under our side of the house, and the benefit is that first of all, the woman leader will actually under our side of the house will be trusted, right? There's no doubt for society to actually choose the woman leader in the future, because under our side of the house, the moment we clarify that actually we capable as a woman, there's no skeptical reasons for them to choose woman. There's no kind of skeptical like and stigma that did by the society to choose woman, because in status quo people doesn't choose woman leader because they are questioning the woman's capability, and we give the proper and legit example that we capable as human. Plus, positive will be the only theme that break down the stigma in this current debate, right? Secondly, women unite to work together under our side of the house, because there will be expectation. It is the moment we will unite as the woman. So therefore, the exclusive harm under the side of the house is that they cannot break down those kind of stigma, and we say that it is really bad under the side of the house, right? So therefore, it is harmful. We brought you to.
I thank the Prime Minister for the speech. To open the case for team opposition, I call upon the leader of opposition. Here. By the way, please state your preference, how you want to go for POI.
Hello, the connection was a bit unstable on their speech. Is it okay if we disconnect and change Wi-Fi's?
Yeah, 2 minutes max, I think 2 or 3 minutes. Or
Okay.
just use like some backup devices.
We're gonna change it really quick. Hello, am I loud and clear? Is my voice breaking out?
There's a bit of vibration. Could you like repeat?
Sorry?
Okay, better, much better.
Okay. Okay, I'll be starting my speech. Oh, timer. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The problem with the government side is that it creates a bigger division between men and women. The source of this problem that women are better than men. We will still, and we, not only that, but we will endorse feminist icons as a strong role models, and we promote a diverse leadership style of women, that women can just be as good as men. Now, our burden of proof on how this is actually counterproductive towards the feminist movement. Now, before I go any further, I would first like to address 2 rebuttals. My first rebuttal is that the government team mentioned on how the leaders have failed, for example, on how Donald Trump failed. Now, it's not because he's a man, but it's because he's a Republican Party, which is generally anti-science. Donald Trump has constantly actually proved or constantly said on how the COVID situation wasn't that serious, and he constantly denied any sort of precaution. This has caused him to fail, not because he was actually a man. For example, you can take the example of Justin Trudeau, who is the leader of Canada, on how they have very good handling of the COVID-19 pandemic deal. Now, moving on to my second rebuttal is that women leaders can be voted because people won't be skeptical. However, if women are inherently good in their merits, they would be voted by the end of the day, and exactly why Angela and Jacinda was voted. Now, moving on to the urgency on why it's very important that we need to address this problem. So, in the status quo, there is already a rising suspicion that the feminist movement leans more towards women's supremacy. For example, on how the narrative that all men are trash, are reporting sexual harassment without any proof, women reporting men. However, whether or not this is true or false, it already makes it harder to accept feminist ideas because they're seen as attacking men because of women's supremacy. Feminist movements are inherently going to be harder to integrate on the government side of the house because conservatives see it as an attack and makes them defensive and less likely to pass policies benefiting women. For example, more sexual harassment protection rights, or, policies, and etc. And not only that, but the general public will see it as a radical movement and unpopulist ideologies. I will later get into that in my arguments. Now, first moving on to my efficacy point on how it's more effective in creating acceptance for women and men leaders. Well, what happens, let's give contextualization on the status quo or on the government side of the house. What happens to outgroup of feminism in the government side? Well, conservatives will radicalize and say that feminists are radical and want female supremacy. When there are votes for feminist policies, they will never vote for those policies. And secondly, when feminist movements does make when feminist movements does do that, they counter protest. For example, Meninists on how government never listens to feminists and there are equal numbers of feminists and anti-feminists, and no action will be actually voted because, and not only that, but they also call out, hello, is my internet okay? Okay, and on how they called out Justin Trudeau in Canada, they can actually use that and say on how men are actually better than feminist movements, and they can have further leverage to further capitalize on the downfall of the feminist movement. And not only that, but on the government side, the gray areas who are non-patriarchal men, when they see the narrative that is women's supremacy, they see it as a not populist to march with feminist movement. They're scared that they're going to be attacked by these conservatives or these counter-protesters, and they lose a chance to sway gray areas because the government makes the feminist movement look radical. However, on our side of the house, we can maintain the clear message that feminist stands for political, social, and economic equality between the sexes. It's likely because it gives less leverage for those conservatives to actually sway these gray areas because they don't have that much leverage to say that, oh, these women are fighting for women's supremacy. And the general public will be less defensive and more likely to vote for these feminist values because they no longer feel attacked. They no longer feel as if the women should be prioritized over men. They see it as an equal, and they still see that the feminist movement needs to be protected. And by the end of the day, we will be able to have more policies, more leaders, and etc. voting for the feminist movement. Now, moving on to my second efficacy, how it's effective in creating more sustainable woman acceptance in the future. Well, let's identify why these women on the government that the government provided examples for, why these women succeeded. Well, those women are leading towards more progressive and developed nations. What does this mean? Well, more people will be obeying the health protocols. More people can afford working from home, and etc. So their success wasn't completely because they were women. So what does this mean, ladies and gentlemen? Well, if all the feminist movements implemented this, because feminists can be applied in developing nations, conservative nations, and etc., this would be detrimental. Why? Because not only could conservatives use that as an excuse, on how it's not women that's good, it's the nation, but we're also going to set up the feminist movement for failure. How so? Well, this pandemic is very unpredictable, and not only that, but it differs from nation to nation. For example, the vaccines could fail, or because there wasn't enough studies conducted, or it can have the virus mutation. This is very detrimental, and because this can make it when the feminist movement or when a feminist leader actually fails, the conservatives will have more leverage to actually call out and scrutinize this feminist movement and make it harder to implement these values in the future. And not only that, but there's always going to be something that they can criticize, ladies and gentlemen. For example, if you prioritize healthcare over the economy and cause unemployment, conservatives will, by the end of the day, call that out and say that, oh, men are going to be more powerful than women. They're going to be more defensive, have more leverage. And however, if on our side, leaders are able to adopt these feminine values. For example, being more cautious or not always having to be courageous by the end of the day, which makes society more progressive and more likely to accept these ideals because we're already normalizing that feminine qualities can still be accepted inside these political issues, inside these political leaders, and we can have more feminist conversation and etc. Now, moving on to the trade-off. So why is it justified to prioritize not encouraging more women to become leaders? Well, no, we can still do that on our side of the house because the narration would be that women are capable of being a leader instead of saying that women are better. The feminist movement advocacy for more women in politics would not be affected. But even if the Gov side makes more women go into politics, it's even worse on their side because women leaders would be held to a higher standard. They would be seen as a failure if they're less incredible like those women leaders. This perpetuates the nation that women need to be more need to do more effort to get the same amount of appreciation by men by the end of the day. It only hinders the feminist movement even more. So in developing nations, if they actually believe this narrative that's amplified by the feminists and they vote for women leaders, when they fail because developing nations are inherently more problematic, the chance of women being elected in future would virtually disappear. People would rather vote male leaders, even though they have also messed up, because it's been traditional to believe that men are better at being a leader. Meanwhile, one bad president would hinder women being leaders in the future by the end of the day. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this debate today, we have not only proven that this problem would only cause more suspicion towards women's supremacy, but it's also more effective in creating women leaders in political issues, and it's also more sustainable for the future. And it's okay to prioritize not encouraging women to become leaders because, for example, we're only going to be giving more leverage to these conservatives. We're only going to empower these conservatives to further call out if this woman makes a mistake. And not only that, but it's a very risky investment because there's multiple factors. Therefore, you should vote for team government opposition.
Thank you. Just a second. I think there's like, hold on. All right. I thank the leader of opposition for speech. To extend the case from the government, I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Okay, hello, am I audible? Hello, am I audible? Yeah, audible. Okay.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry. Wait. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Women right now is actually suffering because sometimes they are undermined because they are emotional, because they are weak, because they are less disciplined, etc., etc. That all we do as a women always be obscured with the other things, for example, men and the other things. And we believe that it is something that is very mean. That's why we are actually concerned towards this. We believe that this COVID-19 pandemic is actually a golden momentum for us to show that we are, as a women, is capable enough to overcome this kind of pandemic, especially when it is actually new. Then we are actually having a new start the same starting points with other people. Therefore, it will actually be a valid evidence that we can actually capable to do this kind of thing. So in the future, we believe that the moment we are doing this kind of thing, we believe that we will be trusted as women, that there will be no doubts for other people to choose us because we already give them a concrete example that we can do this kind of thing right now. In the status quo right now, people doesn't choose women. Why? Because they are actually still questioning the capability of the women itself. In our center house, we believe that it won't actually happen. It won't be happen anymore because it was already proved wrong that women is actually capable enough to overcome this such of pandemic itself that is something that makes people is actually suffering itself. Then what's going to happen in our center house is women is just going to be working together because there's an expectation coming from the society. Therefore, they will actually work hand in hand. They will be supportive on one another in order for them to overcome this kind of thing and to raise themselves as a feminist movement. Now, as a clarification, in the center house, they are mentioning that Trump is failed because Trump is a Republican, not merely because of the man itself. But we believe that it is a proof that you are actually supporting this party and you are actually supporting the sexism. Because why? Because you are approving that a man mistake is not his own mistake, but it is about the community that this man is actually having, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that it is actually something that is wrong. Because why? Because we believe that Donald Trump is able to control this Republican. Donald Trump is actually having a power, and he is actually the decision maker. So the moment that they are actually doing this kind of thing, it is actually their own fault as a management. It is not because of the Republican and so on and so forth that you are only making it as an excuse in order to not in order for us to not blaming this Trump as a man itself. We strongly don't agree with this kind of things. Now, continuing my rebuttals, in the Senate House, they are mentioning that the case of COVID is something that is very unpredictable, and it cannot be justified as an achievement if women is capable to overcome this kind of thing. And we know that it is something that is very unpredictable, and that's why it is the only evidence for us, it is the only chance for us to have the same starting point as man itself, because both women and men is still new about this kind of thing, and they will actually work and try really hard in order for them to have a better decisions, to create a better things, and in facing this COVID pandemic itself. So the moment that women can be better towards men in this kind of case, it is a proof that women is actually working more accurate, that women is actually better. So therefore, we can use this as a golden momentum, as what my previous speaker has already mentioned to you. Now, second of all, they are mentioning that in our Senate House, the moment that women are capable and we are using it as we are actually not regretting this kind of trend, it would actually impose a higher standards for the women itself. It would harder for women to actually participate in politics because they're already a higher standards from the very beginning. But first of all, we say no, because why? Because at least in our Senate House, they will already approve that they are actually capable to do this kind of thing. So it actually open a gate for them to actually go and opt into this politics, because there are already a lot of there's already a proof that women is actually capable to overcome this kind of thing. And second, even if it will be hard, we believe that it will be a triggering system for women to actually work together. For example, they can actually support each other, support their sister, and vote other countries, doing a lot of collaborations. And we believe that at the end of the day, the feminist group will also support the names for that is becoming a leader to maintain the successness. So that's why we believe that it is still okay in our Senate House. Now, continuing to my extension, I'm going to be talking about how we are able to increase women political positions that at the end of the day will also embrace women in the other places. First of all, right now, we are living in a world where women politicians are still less. Why? Because they are having a less politician. Why they are having a less position in this politics is most likely because women becomes most likely the women are having a chance to opt into politicians only because they are privileged or only because they are rich. Why the other ones cannot get any proper position to opt into politics? Why? Because there is already a narration that women join politics only to empower other women, that they are only going to inject this kind of feminist movements in their acts when they're actually opt into politicians itself. We believe that the moment that this narrative is created, it will be more the moment that this narrative is created, it would actually be becoming a proof that most likely women are only jumping to politics on only using a vision or mission that only pro to women itself. For example, like Angela Merkel, a socialist, that she is trying to increase standard living of women itself. This narrative implies that women in politics didn't get any position because they are only becoming too selfish and too exclusive about their politics about their feminist ideology itself. And we believe that this kind of thing is going to be very dangerous. Because why? Two reasons. First of all, women in politics will only get a small position and it is not going to be significant. For example, they are always becoming the secondary leader and not the center, because they are only being exclusive towards one certain ideology that only benefits the feminist itself. And second of all, women politicians are most likely undermined. Why? Because they're already a mindset that they are only supporting these women, that they are only exclusive towards this women itself. Especially when we are talking about countries that is still not that progressive, they will be seen as an important. Because why? Because in this country, women's right is not the priority of the society itself. That's why we believe that we need to change the condition itself. Now, how we are able to change? Because in our Senate House, we believe that COVID-19 is an issue that impacts everyone regardless the gender itself. Your contribution, this women contribution in trying to solve this kind of thing, will be valued so much by the society itself, because all society is already suffering so lot with this kind of pandemic. So the moment that these women can actually contribute and can actually overcome this kind of thing, it will be valued so much. It will be a huge milestone of this women itself, and it would actually make them being valued so much. And it is only going to be exclusive in our Senate House. Because why? Because when this feminist movement, we are trying to emphasize the contributions of women politicians in COVID. At the end of the day, it would actually create a better better society judgment that actually women can actually overcome this kind of thing. And the opposite side, and the opposite sides, when we are not trying to emphasize, when we are not trying to use this moment, what's going to happen is what our work that we are having doing right now is just going to be overclouded with the other things. For example, like men politicians are just going to start to care about COVID, and they can actually overcloud all of what we are actually doing right now, all of our hard works right now. That's why it is very exclusive in our center house. Then what kind of benefit we are trying to propose to you when we are already having an image that we are not longer inclusive? There will be three impacts. First of all, women politicians will be easier to get position into the politics itself. They could actually easily opt into politics because there's evidence that they are capable enough. And second of all, for our movement itself, we believe that it would actually improve. Because why? Because right now, women politicians will only see as a potential actor that is exclusive. But the moment that we are trying to opt in and we are trying to we are proving that we can actually overcome this kind of pandemic, it will actually lead into the mindset that we are actually not that exclusive enough. At the end of the day, what's going to happen is it will be easier for us to get a lot of donation and so on and so forth. Why? Because we are not exclusive at all. And third of all, talking about our member or the women politician itself, we believe that these women politicians will be a role model that can improve the spirit of women to actually work harder, to actually become significant in the society itself. And we believe that this kind of benefit is something that is very important. Why? Because first of all, in women in a conservative area, for example, like India, they will be embraced, and that's why we are proud to.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his speech. To extend the case from team opposition, I call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Before we start, can I ask, did I freeze when I was giving my speech?
Just slightly, just for like 3-4 seconds, but the overall points were still taken.
Okay.
Am I speaking close enough to the mic? Is my voice breaking out?
A bit too close.
A bit too close.
Yeah.
Okay. What about now? Is it good? Can I start?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, cool. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. We agree that female leadership is important in the status quo, but our BOP is just saying that government's motion will be counterproductive to that goal, right? And we think that we have proven that by saying how this actually perpetuates the narratives of women's supremacy and women actually feeling like they are better than men instead of being equal to men, right? Which has been largely unresponded, by the way. But anyways, we will also prove how we will have better support for women leadership in opposition, right? Because opposition will not abandon women leadership as well. We will be still campaigning about forms of good leadership, which I'll explain later in my extension. Anyways, before moving on to that, few responses, right? Firstly, the question that government hasn't answered is, if female leaders in COVID are so appreciable, why do people not understand that? And why will people not organically reconsider women in their leadership positions, right? Why do you need the feminist movement to make this narrative stronger, right? We think that this is not that urgent, right? Why do you need the feminist movement in order to make society value these performances, right? It's going to happen organically, right? They did not characterize the outgroup realistically. But we say that if feminist movement perpetuates this narrative, and especially saying that women are better precisely, then this will be seen as women's supremacy. And this will actually just trigger the meninist movement, which has subsided back then, but now it's going to come back, right? We think that women are going to be seen as too radical, and the male-dominated politics right now will actually not vote for women-dominated policies because they'll be too insecure that their political positions will be taken away, for example, or that men will be compromised in the policies, right? We think that's something that doesn't give unity. Also, why do you have to be sexist exactly in your side by saying that these leaders were good because they are women, right? We think that this further perpetuates the women's supremacy narrative from before. Also, next thing that they haven't answered, we think that this narrative is very shaky and unsustainable, as my first speaker has stated, right? Firstly, in the status quo, women's supremacy is already destructive. Radical feminists are likely to perpetuate the message that all men are trash, and all of feminism, even though not all feminists are radical, will be seen as they are radical, right? Just because there are radical feminists who are perpetuating this message. This should be avoided. Secondly, it's very easy for the men to attack these narratives because they can just say that Justin Trudeau also did great, right? We think that this narrative just becomes unrealistic and illogical, right? Opposition has a likelier narrative because we just highlight the traits that can be adopted by everyone, that can be adopted by men as well, to be good to their citizens and to also be good to men and women indiscriminately, right? Okay. Next, clarification. They said that women leaders are not being enough in catering policies to women in the status quo. This should be framed outright. We think that no side can change the condition of Megawati back then, for example, which she couldn't make that much feminist policies. That was because the society of Indonesia was already racist, for example, or Benazir Bhutto cannot be that good to women as well because society was very patriarchal, right? We think no side can change that. Now, okay, on to my extension, which is going to talk about inclusivity. This is also going to directly clash about their ideas of protecting women, right? We think that the in-group of the feminist movement is going to be harmed in the government side. In their best case, women are going to be seen as good leaders just because they are women, and they're going to be chosen as good leaders just because they are women, right? But we think their best case is exactly going to be harmful to women, right? Because you raise the expectations of women in leadership. Most women cannot do this, especially the most vulnerable women in our side. We think that these are women who are aspiring to be leaders. These are saleswomen who are, who are at the bottom of the hierarchy, wanting to be promoted as a manager, for example, in developing countries, for example. But they have a family that forces them to be a housewife, or they have to take care of their family and they have to multitask, right? We think that their life is already disadvantaged, and actually all women's lives are already inherently disadvantaged in being leaders because they have to be pregnant, for example. They have to multitask, they have to breastfeed and take care of their children, and their family is likely unsupportive as well, right? Where the women are most vulnerable. These are many women actually all over the world. What happens to them in the government side? Three things. Firstly, they'll be exploited. Patriarchal CEOs will give them the position of the manager, but then they'll be burdened by too much tasks, for example. They have to take care of the team morals because they're good at emotions. They have to increase the sales because they're good at making policies. They have to also take care of the company's promotion at the same time, for example. But they still don't get overtime pay, for example, or they are paid the same as men, right? And it justifies these narratives in the government side because women are gifted leaders and you shouldn't help them with anything. We think this will just lead to more exploitation. Secondly, when these women fail to achieve the expectations, they are seen as unuseful assets, right? Because you have to give period and pregnancy leave to begin with as companies. And if the leadership of the women are not as good as respected, we think that they'll be demoted or they'll be laid off, right? When they don't achieve the overinflated target that's purposely used by companies. That is currently also a popular strategy, right? Making over expectations and then laying people off when they don't get it. We think this will be worsened. In politics, this also happens, right? We think that in politics, after you actually reach a position as a woman, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a smooth ride, right? It's likely to be imperfect, which is very likely in politics because even Obama could be criticized and shamed by many people, right? We think that it makes it easier in the government side to put female mistakes on the spotlight, for example. Puan Maharani will be overly demonized on the government side, and society will just say that these women who were successful were just lucky, and when the other women fail, they are never given another chance because they are just not made for it, right? The mistakes of women are worsened, and these women are harder to recover. That's why you have less protection. And thirdly, we think that people will not give any extra assistance to women in the government side for women leaders, like having quotas in the board of directors, for example, or having maternity leave, which is something that you still don't have in most non-progressive countries, right? Because these women were already great leaders. You cannot give them any more affirmative action because they are naturally great leaders. Government just undermines the affirmative action that many women still crucially need in developing countries, right? Like quotas in education, quotas in the board of directors to make the board itself more feminist. We think that these are going to be just jeopardized. What happens in opposition? In opposition, you will show all spectrums of the leadership of women, right? You'll tell the stories of single moms who have to take care of their family, but is also a successful and respectable leader in their company, for example. Or you will also tell how these women are risk-taking and brave, unlike the risk-averse Jacinda Ardern, for example, but they can also succeed, right? You support a diverse range of women, right? And it's going to be good because we are not naive. We say that women can be imperfect and women can be disadvantaged. So policies like maternity leave and affirmative action will be exclusive under our side, where there's actually sympathy in order to trigger these policies to begin with, right? Also, in our side, people will still have the interest to recruit women and make these policies because it adds the productive force, because like women are 50% of the economy, and companies will want to look favorable by doing CSR, by looking feminist, right? We think that this can organically happen, but this only happens in the scenario where women's expectations in being leaders are not too high, which is exclusive in our side. The government side provides an unsustainable scenario for the most vulnerable actors, which are trying to climb the ladder, but they are disadvantaged by their conditions and surroundings. We think this is a choice feminism that excludes the most vulnerable women who are disadvantaged by their conditions. Right? Opposition can cater to those women and also make role models in our side that are imperfect, but it's okay because they can also do well. Vote for opposition.
I thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for his speech. To close the substantive part of government's case, I call upon the government whip. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2. Oh yeah, if there are any POI, you can just unmute yourself. I'm not going to check the chat box. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge, we say that proposition's proposal is really important for two stakeholders. Firstly, for the women who still in conservative area like India, for example, we think that by proposal of propositions, they will get embraced because they seen that, oh, their fellow sisters are being emphasized and so on and so forth, right? It is also important because under our Sarta House, we will create that mindset for the women in itself that, look, there's also already the existence of women as a role model for you, means that you are also capable, you are also able to do the thing that like what other women able to do in the very first place, right? Because knowing that the reason why women are always creating a slow development for too long, it is exactly because you follow opposition's bench when under the side of the house, the narrative are going to be overshadowed that the women is incapable to begin with. That is exactly why we think that this golden momentum we need to highlight them in the very first place, right? But secondly, for the women who already influenced in the conservative environment and so on and so forth, we think that under our side of the house we're able to break down the stereotype and inspire them even better, because under our side of the house we will show that, look, even women also capable. That is exactly why perfectly fine for you to having such a goal, and you will be able to reach it in the very first place, right? Hence we say that in the word of propositions we're able to create a structural change that women is capable and so on and so forth, right? Just we say that in the best case scenario under our side of the house, when we're able to create an awareness, we think that it's also going to create a bottom-up movement to asking for more demand to the government to create women protections and so on and so forth. But let's take the worst case scenario. At worst, we're unable to create changing. At the very least, we're able to create a peace and embrace our own fellow sister in the very first place. That is the most important thing that needs to be done by feminist movement to begin with. We think that those kind of point, those kind of thing never going to be achieved by following oppositions, because even in the word of oppositions, you dismiss the achievement that already created by your own member in the very first place. That is exactly why vote for propositions. Now in the rebuttal, moving on to my clashes. First, in my speech, I have two major clash. Firstly, talking about the efficacy, and secondly, talking about the benefits. First clashes, talking about whether highlighting the success story of women, especially in the case of COVID-19, is something that's going to be effective to create acceptance or not. But propositions portrayal on how, oh, when you get failed, you will get blamed and so on and so forth. Judge, we think that this argument is always relying on the worst case scenario of how, in the word of propositions, when you go to the politics, for example, you will all of a sudden get failed and you will all of a sudden get blamed and so on and so forth. They never take our best case scenario or even the middle scenario. They'll always take the extreme scenario, right? But okay, let's assume this kind of scenario could be applied for response for this. Firstly, Judge, we say that it is not likely for them to fail because women who choose it to or sit in the parliament, for example, becoming president and so on and so forth,
having a commitment and capability to begin with, right? In the word of propositions, we will give them a chance, and in the word of oppositions, you will dismiss them and don't give any kind of chance for them to show off in the very first place, right? But then that it is exactly bad because you, even as a feminist movement, will embolden the negative stigma in the word of oppositions that women is incapable as one and so forth, right? Secondly, moreover than that, we do believe that women also work under the pragmatic reason in the very first place, right? That is exactly why rather practical argument does matter, because under propositions, these kind of people will working together hand in hand, unity as a woman in the very first place, right? That is exactly why when they try to claim on how, oh, there will be the systems of expectations and so on and so forth, it is exactly going to be better in the word of propositions because you will work together to reach those kind of goals, to fulfill people's expectations in the end of the day, right? It might be hard, but it is perfectly fine. In compare with a word of oppositions, when you will continuously succumb to the patriarchy in the very first place, we say that it is much more better because in the word of propositions, we will give more light for this kind of people to show that you're also capable in the very first place, right? Thirdly, at the very worst case scenario, we will be failed. Within that, it is not necessarily get mocked in the very first place, right? Because we earlier already proved and highlight that look, women already having a big contributions in the very first place in the dangerous situation for a world when all people are also when all countries are also facing the same thing, which is COVID-19. Women is becoming the one that able to give you a better solution in terms of solving this kind of cases. For example, women is the one that much more capable in the very first place. It is exactly why the mocking will not necessarily be there, because under our side of the house, even the women in itself not only benefiting the women but also the men and all layer of society. With that, it is exactly important to be highlighted in the very first place, right? But the word of oppositions, at best, they're able to go to this kind of work field, for example. But when they're failed at certain things, within that exactly when you don't want, when you don't show any kind of highlighted of your contributions, it is exactly going to embolden the narrative that you are incapable in the very first place, right? But fourthly, lastly, within that it is exactly bad by pulling opposition's bench. Even the leader of oppositions also admit that, oh, it is the mistake of Republican, not because Trump is man and so on and so forth. We think that those kind of thing, even opposition's bench in itself also becoming sexist and patriarchal in the very first place, right? They always create a justifications for men's failure in the very first place, right? We think that it is exactly going to worsen the conditions by pulling oppositions. That is why we think that in the justifications level, the clash goes to propositions in the very first place, right? But second clash is talking about which side of the house that able to create benefits. Basically, opposition try to impose harm two things. Firstly, on how there will be the existence of women supremacy, and secondly, there will be the attack coming from women in the work and politics and so on and so forth, right? Judge, as always, oppositions always take an extreme scenario to begin with, right? We think that it is not going to be radical. Let's deal with it one by one. Firstly, talking about about women supremacy and so on and so forth, we're questioning the likelihood to begin with, because knowing that under the word of propositions, we're not going to be radical, because we expose the achievement of women that deserve in the very first place, right? We will highlight them and giving an appreciation in the very first place. Not that we're not going to kill the men like what done by Gula Bigang in the very first place. That is exactly why in the word of propositions, we're not going to be that radical and creating women supremacy in the very first place, right? Moreover than that, the context we play is when the majority word, when women is not that powerful in the very first place. It is exactly why under our side of the house, we will give more power for the women in itself. That's why we think that it is way better in the word of propositions, right? But okay, even if it is true, we are questioning why we're not allowed to do an appreciation for our fellow member in the very first place, right? Because they already hard work for too long. We think that they deserve this kind of appreciations in the very first place, right? When many men agree about women's supremacy, that women is better than men, and so on and so forth, then we're questioning the exact harm coming from this kind of thing in the very first place, right? Because we do believe that it is exactly giving more freedom for the women in itself to express themselves even better. That is exactly why we think that it is still much more better in the word of propositions in the end of the day, right? What's going to be created in the word of oppositions is that when you as a woman don't want to appreciate your fellow member, there will be the existence of internal conflict between one another, because see even this kind of women are not supporting your fellow sister. It is also going to be used for conservative to attack you back, that how not solid you are in the very first place. That is exactly why opposition is so harmful. But secondly, talking about attacking women in the workplace and so on and so forth, right? Firstly, judge within that it is super worst case scenario, because they never engage on how in the word of propositions we are going to be create a success story and so on and so forth, right? But moreover than that, let's assume that it is going to be happen. Within that, we're still able to manage the protections, like how we will keep lobbying the government. Secondly, we will keep doing a campaign through our achievement that are really helpful, and lastly, we'll keep doing a protest and so on and so forth, right? These three things will obviously getting better in the word of propositions, because we portray that women is also part of your society, that giving a contribution to you. That is exactly why within that all the benefit will go to propositions. We're more than proud to propose. Thank you.
I thank the government whip for speech to close the substantive case for team opposition. I call upon the opposition whip. Yeah.
Hello, am I close enough to the mic?
Yeah, good.
Okay. Any BOI, just unmute yourself. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We think that it is very unfair, right, for team proposition to say that what will happen in their side is that they're just going to say that, oh, women are capable. We believe that it is exactly what is happening in our side, right? What is going to happen in their side of the house is that feminist movement actively telling that women are inherently better than men and that men are bad at being leaders, etc. We believe that that is what they must defend instead of only saying how stands that women are capable, instead of actually vilifying the men who have also messed up in COVID, right? So there are two questions that needs to be answered in this debate by both sides. First, what would actually happen? What would be the reaction of the outgroup? But second, what would actually happen inside the woman itself? First, what would happen for the outgroup? We have extensively explained to you that what will happen is that this kind of movement would be seen as woman supremacy. Their side defended by saying that, oh, we would not be saying that kill men, but exactly what we have been trying to characterize to you, that even something that is that is not violent, no thank you, that is not harmful, like for example, men are trash, is already been demonized by so many people. It's already been used by so many conservatives saying that, oh, the feminist agenda is actually erasure of men, for example. Exactly this kind of non-harmful phrases is already detrimental to the feminist movement, and that is also what is happening, what will happen when feminist movement is saying that women are better than men, right? We have characterized to you that no, thank you. We have characterized to you that when you say that women are better, it gives the implication that men are bad, right? The men would feel defensive and they would feel attacked. And what will happen is that they would just nitpick other men's success story, for example, Jacinda. What will happen is that there will be constant dispute whether men or women would actually succeed in being leader. Meanwhile, what is actually happening? What is actually behind those success story? We believe that it has It has very little to do with their gender, and it has everything to do with their party, their ideology, the progressivity of the country, etc. We believe that the majority success of why those kind of female leaders actually succeeded in COVID-19 is because they actually lead already progressive country, right? It means more people actually obey the health protocols. It means more people actually could afford working from home, etc. It is very little to do from what are their genders. We believe that it is exactly sexist if their side associate good or bad trait just because of their gender. In their side of the house, they have to defend that saying that men are inherently bad at being a leader, not because they're actually a bigot, for example. We have characterized to you that this kind of amplification of a narrative by the feminist movement would only be detrimental and would only be counterproductive and would only be demonized by the outgroup. But second question, what will actually happen for the woman? But for that POI, yes. Hello?
By not accepting women's supremacy, which a majority, which is the men already accept, are under your side of the house, you will continuously not appreciating the women achievement in the very first place. We're questioning that.
Okay, we believe that in our side of the house, we appreciating those kind of women could still exist, right? But without the phrase that they are inherently better because they are women. We are going to say that, oh, Jacinda Ardern is actually good at facing the pandemic. We would say that that Angela Merkel is actually good at facing the pandemic. Not saying that women are better than facing the pandemic. We believe that it is very different because it will only make men feel attacked, right? We have characterized you enough. But second, what would actually happen for the woman itself? In our side of the house, there would still be advocacy for women to actually be involved in politics. What does it look like? It looks like we would still tell, for example, girls that they are capable and could be equal to be a leader without telling them that men are worse. We believe that this notion is exactly telling them to be sexist, right? Telling them that the only reason why they succeed and the only reason why they fail is just because they're a man or woman. We believe it is very counterproductive and it's very not in line with what the feminist movement actually is, right? What will happen in their side of the house when you say that women are better than men is that there will be further division between men and women. A woman would feel like man is that bad. Meanwhile, what is actually happening is that in the feminist itself, there are men allies, for example. There are men allies that could that has been helping the feminist movement to be heard more, for example. We believe that your side of the house is discriminating people based on their gender, right? Meanwhile, what happens in our side of the house is we actually consider that some women that some person are inherently better at facing the COVID pandemic because of their ideology and their country, etc., not because of their gender. But second, what will happen to the woman, right? First, about women in politics. They say that, oh, it's just taking the worst case that politicians would fail. But we have characterized to you that most politicians would fail, right? Why? Because politicians could not fulfill everyone's need and there would always be protests against them no matter what happens, right? For example, when a politician was actually get the majority vote, but at the end of the day, their supporters could still feel like they are not fulfilling them, right? And we have also given examples, like for example, Megawati, when she gives non-populist policies, for example, that is being not accepted by the woman itself. What will happen is that in those developing countries that you desperately want to protect, is that those developing countries are politically unstable, right? There are more problems that are happening in those kind of countries. There are more possibility that politicians will fail, right? Because it took a very great person to actually succeed in those kind of developing countries, right? And what will happen once they fail is that in the future, it would be a precedent of failure, right? People would no longer vote women because they would see that, oh, they have messed up, so we must go back to our traditional belief in which man is actually better at being the leader. What happens in your side of the house? Women are being held to a very high standard, right? Women will be seen as a failure if they are not as good as Jacinda Ardern or Angela Merkel, for example. So, but second, what will happen to women outside of politics, like we have explained, like for example, the salesperson, the managers, etc. They would be held to a very high standard because they are going to be exploited and they would be given more burden because they are seen as someone who is strong, right? Because women are better than men. They would be told like, if Jacinda Ardern could solve COVID-19, you could get good sales in our management, right? So that is exactly what is going to happen. Meanwhile, what is the actual stance of feminist movement, right? What the feminist movement actually wants is equality, that everyone can be good or bad beyond their gender, right? But also considering that women also have these biological disadvantages. So why we still need, like for example, maternity leave, for example. If we are exploiting the narrative that women are better, we would be seen as we don't need those kind of advantages anymore because women are inherently better anyway, so they don't need any more advantages, right? What will happen in your side of the house is that first, outgroups will further demonize feminist movements, which has already been happening in the status quo. But second, women will be held by a very high standard, and that they are a failure if they are less than exceptional. Our side actually protects the vulnerable people that we all want to protect. Vote for team opposition. Thank you.
I thank the opposition for the speech. To close the case for team opposition, I call upon the opposition reply. Here.
Hello? Am I too loud now, or is it good?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, cool. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. It is not our burden to find a momentum and find its rising stars because it's tokenistic and it makes over expectations, right? Organic and slow change is possible. All we needed to prove was why government is counterproductive, but we think we also did beyond that and prove why the organic change is likely to happen in opposition side better. But 3 reasons that we win in this debate. Firstly, government side wants change, but they only gave you impacts without any likelihood or characterization of why the people who are the key stakeholders will actually make this impact, right? Like, who are you spreading the narrative to? Or why will these people not reconsider to automatically include women more if COVID is such an important issue, right? Why does the feminist movement need to amplify these messages? We think that this is ridiculous. We said in our side that all of this will just come out as women supremacy because you are literally saying that women are better than men, right? Instead of equal. We characterize 2 actors. Firstly, on conservatives, they'll say that this is female supremacists because saying that women are better means that men are worse, right? We think therefore they're likely to make the counter protest like Meninism again, and people will be scared to even protest because the threat of the conservatives is high, for example, right? Especially in the countries where patriarchy is high, nobody will protest from the very first place, right? And there will be no vote to actually include women because those who are in power and patriarchal will be too scared to let go of their power, and they'll think that these women will make policies that are actually favoring women and disadvantaging men, right? That's why there is no middle ground, and you will not achieve peace or change with the conservatives. And also with the gray areas, right? They'll just see that the conservatives' suspicion that feminists are actually just women supremacists is true, right? And they will see that feminists isn't actually populist, so you lose the only capital of people who you can actually change because they don't see the idea as populist and because they will rather jump into the conservative bandwagon, right? Change happens in opposition because these people who are in the gray areas are actually not exposed to the ideas that feminist is actually that radical, right? We should stay safe. Secondly, government never engaged to the opposition's counter-proposal. We think that you cannot win a debate by not engaging to your opposition's positive case at all. From the very first speaker, we said that our stance is just promoting that female traits are good, they can be integrated by anyone, and will also show a diverse style of female leadership. They don't all have to be perfect, right? We never said that we will kill men. We never said that we will stay silent. We will still support female leadership in our side, right? And therefore, because they ignore it, what government wants is achievable in opposition side because they did not engage to our entire positive case. Third reason we win, because they dismiss the feminist movement's most sustainable capital for change, which is sympathy, right? We think that we characterize that women are inherently disadvantaged. They have to be pregnant. They have to take maternity leave. They have to find period leave as well. And you have to actually make sympathy because not in all times women can be good money makers to society, right? So we think that what they said that they'll add women, they'll increase the recruitment of female leaders, right? But here's what happens. In government, you might recruit them faster, but you give them a false sense of hope, right? Because later in the work, you'll be exploited, you'll be overburdened because people think that you're already a gifted leader, right? We think that that's not a preferable case, especially for the women who are already vulnerable and oppressed by society. They're even easily sexually harassed and whatnot, right? In opposition, the recruitment might be slower, but at least it's better, right? Because there's a safety net. There's a safety net that when you are pregnant, there will be a maternity leave, right? And that when you fail, you're not overly demonized and you can still sustain your job because everyone can be imperfect, right? We think that this is especially what's needed by the most vulnerable actors of the feminist movement who are not perfect because they have to multitask by being housewives as well, for example, right? Government just blocks the capital for affirmative action and for assistance that these women desperately need, right? We think that we not only protect our actors better, but feminist movement is also more populist, right? That's why you should vote for us.
I think the opposition reply for the speech to close the case for team government and the debate as a whole. I call upon the government reply here.
Am I audible?
Could you raise your voice a bit?
What? Am I audible?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to start my reply in 3, 2, 1. Judges, we say you cannot buy their proposal because they're so inconsistent in two things. First thing, they're so inconsistent in terms of stance because they doesn't want to support the achievement, but they want to highlight those kind of women. We're questioning how they can highlight this kind of woman if they doesn't want to support the achievement, right? We're questioning the inconsistency that exists under the side of the house. But they want to highlight the existence of women that already did good inside being the leader inside of the COVID. It means that they want to support them anyway, right? And we say they're inconsistent in terms of stance. It means the harm will be also accessed under their side of the house. Second of all, when the Qatari side of the house say that they doesn't want any woman supremacy that exists, we say that it is also happened in the Qatari side of the house, right? Because they also highlight the existence of women that achieving something also, which is indirectly comparing with the men to create tipping point for the highlight in itself under the side of the house, right? So we're questioning if they want to highlight, but they not comparing with anything. So how the highlight have the tipping point under the side of the house, and how the goal will be achieved under the side of the house, because there's no significance the moment you highlight without comparing anything, right? So under the side of the house, the harm that negative side of the house propose is actually not exclusive because they're inconsistent. Even if in positive side of the house, those kind of harm is exclusive, we say that we are questioning what is the harm anyway, right? Because woman supremacy is actually already accepted anyway by men, to the fact there's a lot of men that being a husband, husband, and etc. And we say that you cannot buy their point. Several clarification towards the negative side of the house. First clarification, they say that COVID is really unpredictable. Exactly, if this kind of COVID is unpredictable, this is able to bring the tipping point that actually we as women is actually capable, because both women and men is actually never faced it before in this current status quo. Exactly, because they both never faced it before, they never experienced it before. This is being the concrete proof, because the moment woman and the man and woman have the same starting point, we already portrayed that actually as women we already did good, right? Exactly, it is a golden momentum to portray, to change the society narrative that woman is capable as capable, and actually as feminist movement we should use this momentum, and we should not left this momentum like under the side of the house, right? Because this is like unique momentum and we cannot get in another chance. Second clarification is that they say that Trump do something that irrational is actually because he's Republican, not because he's a man. This is actually something that did by patriarchy, right? They always search for excuses that something that did by men is actually not the fault of those kind of men, but actually another excuses, which is he's from